It's called East 2. It's a bronze cast from the steel original. That transition from one material to another is something I've been pursuing for many, many years. Some of the first ones I did, Sidney Geist came to the studio and I had a really good talk to him. He really understood the problem of casting from steel to bronze and making it feel like a real sculpture, a sculpture that was meant to be in that material. And bronze, for me, it does bring that up. We accept the casting from clay into bronze or even plaster into bronze. But steel is a different kettle of fish. So when, as my sculptures got denser, more dense, generally speaking, I got more and more interested in the fluidity of the steel, which is the welding, and that way of joining and making the joining material, the weld, become an essential part of the modelling of the sculpture, not a display of virtuoso welding, but just getting that fluidity, which I think has, that's where steel has a relationship to clay. They both can be pretty liquid, just temperature differences. And it's something that's been on my mind a lot, and as my sculptures have gotten more increasingly figurative, there are many reasons for that, but essentially I've been collecting a lot of stuff over the years from all different cultures and living with it, and in one way or another most of it depicts the human face or figure. Going to the museums, the same. Teaching at a school like the Studio School, where they still, employ a model, also factors into that, looking at work all the time and thinking that there's something pertinent about making the figure now, after non-representation. When I first made sculptures, I was overwhelmed and thrilled by non-representation. It just blew me away that, it thrilled me, and I really got passionate about it. But gradually, and that still comes up in my work, I just don't restrict myself to one way of working. But now, I don't, if the figure starts emerging, or a hint of the figure, let's say, as in the Beda series, I don't deny its place, I let it exist now, whereas before I would have ripped it out. And it occurred to me that once you've understood and made works which are non-representational, that you would never really look at the figure in quite the same way again. So that is how I've kind of ended up here. And also, these East pieces are to do a little bit, I think. I have developed a love over the last 15, 20 years of Japanese woodblock prints, ukiyo-e. And they remind me a great deal of the women featured in a lot of those prints. It wasn't an intentional thing, it just emerged through the process. And I think part of it is having lived with my daughter, who's now 23, who is Chinese, and seeing the way she moves. She has a kind of, it's something very, it's very elegant. And it's just the way she sits. And that really intrigued me. And it kind of, when I see things like that, I get very involved and they emerge in my work. It's agglomerative. It starts, I just bunch things together and tack them and weld them and add and keep building outwards until I see something that I put small sections of curved steel plate that I hammer curved, or just dress it up so it gets some double curvature in it. And I tack those together, and then I use round bar or little bits of steel, little punch outs or even balls, and I weld them into the places where the gaps are. And the figure comes there, and in East 1 I allowed that curve, which if you see it as a figure, could be understood as the dress dragging behind the figure, as you see in Chinese and Japanese prints and paintings. Quite often, for instance, the head on this sculpture was actually one of the steel stones that was laying on a base in my studio, and I put it on top there. It's quite strange how it happens, because I just look and find a location for it and tack it. I may adjust it a little bit, and then suddenly the features pop up. I didn't know there was a nose, but if you make something that's lumpy and you put it in a certain place on a column, which could be called the figure, and establish a front, suddenly one of those little lumps claims the territory of nose. And I love putting little finials on, so I put the ball on top. It may be a bad thing, but I can't help myself. And welded that ball on, and that becomes the hairdo. But meeting form to form, how they merge together, that all comes out of African sculpture. I wonder how I got to that image without choosing to go there, but following the results of looking at things in museums, living with things, just surrounding myself with objects, mainly that have artistic merit and a particular kind of beauty. And how much of that is conscious or unconscious? I was excited a long, long time ago when I realised that I would look at something in a painting or a sculpture in the museum, and then months later it would, in working in a spontaneous way, it would emerge and I'd recognise it. I know where that came from. That set of relationships relates to that El Greco or something like that. And I realised, don't interfere with it, Lee. This is something you can do. This happens with you. A layperson, me, can walk up to a sculpture from Africa, have no idea why it was made to look the way it looked, but still feel that is fantastic. That's a beautiful, fantastic thing. And feel the kind of strange emotional aspects of it too, and the rhythm of the aspects of the body, the bits of the body, even frozen in these forms which are not particularly realistic, are kind of poetic and remarkable. And I wanted to be able to get that into sculpture being made today.